And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names, and Joe's rustling the big feathers this week. Look at him go. He needs a feather boa. Hey, I should have bought you. How you going anyway, Andrew?
I'm fantastic, mate. Glad to be here once again.
Yeah, welcome back, mate. Welcome back.
No, how are you guys?
How you going?
Pretty fabulous. I'm fabulous, mate. I'm very good.
Had a haircut.
Had a haircut. Yep. At that point where I either needed to get a haircut or buy a dress, and got a haircut.
You do look sharp, mate. You've got a very sharp look.
Women can have
very
short
Slick
hair,
Rick kind of a look. Slick Rick.
Slick Rick. That's what we want.
Wasn't he like a rapper from the Slick Rick?
I don't know.
How are you, Jeff?
I'm thinking of Pretty Ricky. I just remember, yeah. Anyway, I'm going well. It's crazy that we're only about 6 or 7 weeks to Christmas, but no, I'm excited for this. We're bringing the fire tonight. Joe's rustling from feathers, and I think it's great that he's created a bit of hype, a bit of controversy. Not controversy, I don't think that's the wrong word, but I often like that saying, if you're not sort of annoying or sort of getting people talking, then you're probably not doing much really. So I think it's great that we're going to bring the huge audience in tonight and throw you questions. And well, as long as they're not crazy spices, they're not asking Andrew like to share his bank account details so he can transfer all the money he's just about to make, then we'll look to ask them. But yeah, so tonight, what are we going to talk about? We are talking about, actually, the numbers, Joe. So you give us the rundown because you did the post.
Numbers, no, I did the post. This is what my little Facebook post was that got everyone's knickers in a knot. I said, I'm going to tell you the most ridiculous property investing story I've ever heard. About a guy who bought a $5.7 million property just weeks ago, overpaid by $700,000 for it. That's right. That's right. They only wanted $5 million, and you spent over $700,000 extra to get it, and you only invested $150,000 of your own money for that deal. And in 12 months' time, fingers crossed, all going well, this property should be worth $9 million. So you have netted a boatload of money. Oh, and we've got free cash flow of right now of $500,000. This is by far the most ridiculous property story I've ever heard. Like, this just doesn't make any sense. The numbers are just so crazy. And we wanted to get you on. We went to your event, mate. What's with these events anyway? What's the go? Why are we doing events now? What's the rundown?
Well, I mean, everyone had been asking about it for so long. Like, everyone's always like, when are we going to do an event? When are we going to do an event? Like, I've been doing the commercial property show for like 4 years now, build up a really big audience with that particular podcast. And it's just nice to actually talk to people, see people face to face. And the funny thing is like, people will shake my hand and they know me, but I have no idea who they are. So like, oh, it's Bill. I'm like, okay, Bill, nice to meet you. Like, this is the first time I've literally seen you. Yeah, they have this pseudo relationship with me where they know me. So it's really cool. Like, it's really nice, and it's just really nice to give back to the community and just talk to people and meet people in person, because that's what it's about. Property is a relationship business, so getting back to doing things like that. During COVID we couldn't do it, but now we can, so it's awesome.
Yeah. It's called a parasocial relationship, which is where parasocial, where one side really knows who you are, and it's the same when we go to events. Jeff, people will know us. We have a group of 65 people.
I haven't been to an event, mate. The last time I went to an event was pre-COVID. I don't get. They let me out.
Well, I went to your event, Andrew, and people are like, hey Joe. I'm like, oh, this is
of course.
It's weird.
So, well, we're gonna unpack that deal where
no, that was my point. The reason why I brought the events up was because I wanted to go to this event and find out if Andrew was full of BS on this, because there's no way a guy can buy a $5.7 million property, not sell it then be worth $500,000 of free cash flow, and now be worth soon to be $9 million. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But I grilled Andrew for about half an hour, asking him as many questions as I could, and this guy's legit, and he's actually the secret sauce to this episode might just be a little bit of hard work. But
Oh,
Yeah,
Joe, you're not supposed
maybe.
to say it to the end, mate. Bloody hell. You just
Maybe.
people are going to be like, oh, no, hard work. I don't want to do that. But no, so great. We're going to actually talk to, because yes, the number is it's outrageous, it's fantastic, and congrats I suppose congrats when it actually gets in the can, that particular number. But the number's kind of not really irrelevant to me. But I want to know more about how the process you went through to get to that, because regardless of whether it's 500K, 50,000 or $5 million, whatever that number is, I want to understand exactly not exactly, but I understand the sort of the high level view, and we can ask some specific questions around people. I've got some as well around how you got to that, because I think that's where people can then start to, whether they're buying their first investment property for 400,000 in Townsville or in a part of Adelaide, or whether they're buying a $10 million commercial deal or a $100 million commercial deal, which is your big goal. I think that's the process is what matters, because if you don't understand that, the numbers won't add up in the end. So we're going to look at a lot of that sort of stuff.
Way to make it boring, fun. Jeff. Jesus.
It's not boring, man.
No, it's going to be the good stuff.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
no, good.
What is our content of the week?
Content of the week.
Yeah. Andrew, what is it? Ripper content, we call it. What is your Ripper content of the week?
The Ripper resource, the old segment from the Commercial Property Show from many moons ago. So I don't know if I'm embarrassed about this, but for the last 2 years, I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel, right? And for lack of being able to prioritize time to do it, I'm not using time as an excuse. I haven't made the effort to prioritize to do it. But now, because of my workload, the way I've structured things with, joining Steve at Polisi Property and having, being able to work from home now 100% of the time, I can be able to prioritize time to do this. So recently I picked up a book called YouTube Secrets. I know that sounds pretty lame, but just being able to understand how YouTube all works, what actually counts for click-through rate, watch time, stuff like that, being able to figure out just some little tips to make my channel better for the viewers. That's what this book, delivers. And when I started the podcast, I did exactly the same thing. I researched it. There was a great free podcast about creating a podcast, believe it or not. I did exactly the same thing. So I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel this year, and hopefully, just creating great content about learning about real estate. That's all I really want to do.
Is that called? Is that by Sean Cannell and Benji Travis?
Yeah,
is that the one?
Yeah, it's a really good book actually. It's YouTube Secrets. So I do recommend it if you are starting a YouTube channel, just to give you a bit of leg up. And it didn't really tell me too many things I didn't already understand or know, but I didn't know if there was something that I could be missing. So it's actually a really good book. Like just things actually putting together an actual framework of creating a hook at the start and then not telling the audience when the video is going to end, because if people know the video is going to end, they'll click straight off. And you want to have a complete watch through rate, just to be able.
Can't you just scroll and see the time of what how long the video goes for?
Yeah, but you don't want to start wrapping it up saying, okay, that's the end, guys. This is all the content. It's all done, because people will just click off straight away. You want them to watch completely all the way through, so the YouTube algorithm will then refer suggest it to other people, so you can get your content out to further reach.
Speaking of YouTube, you got a nice little segue. Go and have a look at Oz Property Investors YouTube channel.
Yes.
I'm gonna drop it in the comments now.
We might hire you as a consultant. Why YouTube? It's so rubbish. No.
We're
nearly at 2,000 subscribers. Show going right.
What's your watch time?
Yeah, I like it.
It does count on the watch time though.
Anyway, content of the week. Jeff, what is your content of the week, mate?
My content of the week is it's a podcast. So it is called, because I live vicariously through a lot of things these days. But the podcast is called Amateur Traveler. So I've been to 6 continents. So so the one I haven't been to, guess the one in the comments. You probably not all that surprising. But Amateur Traveler podcast. So this guy's been doing it since 2006. So he's check us out on YouTube. So it is. Check us out on YouTube. Okay, so what he does though, he brings on somebody who travels to a country, and then he asks about he has a format which is really great. I feel like I've actually been to a destination like he even did Australia recently. He spoke about the Gold Coast, and I was like, there you go. So I'm picking up some things about my own sort of patch of land that I didn't even sort of know about. And just so I think it's a really interesting podcast. And even goes like Scandinavia and sort of parts of South America. And I'm just like, wow, these are fancy. If I ever go to, I will want to go to some of these countries. I'll know a lot. I'll have a bit of a cliff note. So they're like sort of 35 minutes. So it's fun to check it out.
Yeah.
That's my resource of the week.
Oh, love it. Yeah, it's like YouTube is becoming TV now. Like there are crazy shows. Like I'm watching a show called Throttle on YouTube, and it's pretty much Pimp My Ride. Like they get a dump car, they turn it into this car, and that's my unwind time. And then there's like, what's the other one? Pimp My House and all of that stuff. But that's not my content of the week. My content of the week is the Diary of a CEO. Fantastic with Steve Bartlett. He's got so many great episodes. One of the ones that I would recommend highly is one with James Dyson. They go into a lot of information, go deep. That guy's life has been an absolute struggle for 20, 30 years. Not get massive success in a quick way. Yeah, that's my content for the week. But anyway, speaking of algorithms and trying to pump this thing up, this is not about content. This is not about algorithms. It's about talking how this man is buying a $5.7 million property, turning it into a $9 million property, which is cash flowing right now at $500,000. But to get that new price of 9 point, we're going to have to move that 500 to a little bit more. So let's dive into how that all works. But before we do that, let's do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement from the master of commercial property investing, Steve Polisi.
I love commercial property.
Get ready to have your minds blown as Steve is back and he's got some pretty exciting news for us. Steve is unleashing his second sensational book upon the world. And get this, for the Oz Property Investors members out there, he's giving it away absolutely free. Yep, 100% free. Yep. 100% free for all property enthusiasts who want to learn and grow on their commercial property investing journey. But he's also added a little extra chili to make this deal even spicier. With this free book, you'll also receive a complimentary 1-hour strategy session with the man himself. Imagine a full 60 minutes with Steve's commercial and property genius dedicated to helping you master the intricate dance of commercial property investing. And who better to dance with? The man who looked better than Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing. Don't know about that. Want to grab this offer? It's super easy. If you're live right now, click the link in the comments and secure it today. If not, grab your device, open up the browser, head over to polisiproperty.com, look for the book page and grab your free copy of Steve's latest masterpiece. And when you're checking out, make sure to use the exclusive code OZPROP to secure the free book and also your free 1-hour strategy session. My only concern with this offer is that Steve's going to have to turn it off soon, as he can only do so many sessions. So if you want to secure your spot, do so today. Oh, nearly passed out there.
It doesn't get boring.
Is that the first time it's run, or is that just freshly new?
I've been going about 6 weeks now, I think.
Oh my God, that was hilarious. That was awesome.
Love a bit of dusting in it, yeah. It's fun times.
When the faces came up and it was Joe, Jeff, and then it was Steve, I thought I was Steve for a second. I was like, I'm not Steve.
What's happened? We've gone live. We've gone back live. He's going to catch him. And so back to the person or man of the hour. And we haven't even talked about the rate rise yet. Jeez, we need to talk about that somewhere. Like, need to pump the algo. No, that's not. So Andrew Bean is a self-proclaimed commercial property nerd. Like, how good is that? Like, we could even get copyright for. You can't be a property nerd, but you can be a commercial property nerd. So he created and hosts. You're talking about your podcasting at a YouTube channel. You founded Commercial Property or CP Data, the first Australian commercial property data to break down. And it's unbiased, and we have to chat about that as well. So I think as well, you've really honed your sort of knowledge about sort of self-storage, and that's what we're going to go deep on tonight. And I think for anybody who's going to do anything, you want to go a mile, an inch wide and a mile deep, rather than a mile wide and an inch deep on a lot of things. Like there's a bit of secret in that. Yes, so what Andrew's done. So you come a background in defense company managing teams and state-of-the-art defense capability. So I think that there's a bit of a secret in there. You're probably bit of a drill sergeant. But last of all, you are a dad of 2, maybe not, and testing yourself daily on a CrossFit. So I saw you with Polizzi. I don't know if it looked like Polizzi was owning you in CrossFit, was it? Or was it the other way around? How was that? How did that go down?
It depends on the workout, I'd say. If it's probably a little bit heavier, I think I have a little bit more power in my my arms and legs than Stevie, but he's got a good motor on him. So if it was just purely like low weight, he's got a good motor.
There you go. So what did I miss though? What did I miss in your journey? What have you done that you've been on?
Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a fair bit there. I mean, what else do you want, mate? No, I'm working, obviously. I've joined Steve at Polizzi Property, which is awesome. Helping a lot of investors now through the buyer's agency and just managing this self-storage project. Joe did get a little bit of it wrong. The property isn't actually cash flowing $500,000 right now. That's where I'm going to. Yeah, so just for clarity. Yeah.
How much is it now? Can you share how much
it started
is it now?
off? It started off 360 gross, right? Yep. And now it's doing 386 net.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Wait, so you've already jumped it up?
Yeah. So like, I've been managing it for the last 4 months. So like every single month I do rate rises, and I'm basically segmenting it. So the way that it works is I don't want to have a mass move out. So I don't want to jack people's rates up like ridiculously, like all at once. So I'm segmenting it to make sure I don't have a mass move out. So I started off with the first floor. The first floor of the property, those were the least obnoxious rate increases. So I decided to do all of the first floor, which was about 60 or so units. That was like $50 here, $80 extra per month. So it wasn't ridiculous. I only actually had 2 move outs after that. So that was really good result because I usually expect about 30% move out after a rate increase. And now what I'm doing is I've gone down to the ground level, and this is where the real money is made. And I'm doing 10 units every single month. And like, but the rate increases are obnoxious, like, because they've had such a good deal for so long. I'm talking like $200 extra per month, like 60% increases. So it's like people bring me up and they're angry with me, and rightfully so. But I just have to tell them, like, look, this is the rate. If you go anywhere else in Wollongong, you're going to be paying this rate, and I'm actually still under it. So for this particular size unit, it's a 6x3. You might be paying, $550 at a Storage King and Nationals, the Kennards. I'm doing it for $495. So you're still getting a great deal. I'm just really bringing it up to market rate. So there's that conversation you have to have with tenants, or every single month.
How did you fall into self-storage as your vehicle of choice? Because
let's take us back. Like, what's the background? Okay. How do you get to self-storage?
So through my investing journey, I started off like everyone else. I really liked residential real estate. I was pumping learning about that. Then I was learning about development, how I could actually create large chunks of cash through subdivisions, stuff like that, right? And then I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad about how he could use cash flow to create to fund his lifestyle. And I was like, if this guy can do it in America, surely there's a way to do it in Australia. So then I figured out how many houses I would need to cash flow like $100,000. And it worked out to be, and this was back in the day when investing for cash flow wasn't what it is today. If you said you were investing for cash flow, people would say it's very, very risky. It's a stupid idea. We only negative gear property for the capital growth. Like that was the play back then. This is 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? And with Robert Kiyosaki, if he can do it, we can do it too. And then I started thinking about how many houses I would need, and I calculated it. And it's 20 or 30 houses that are unencumbered to really make a really good passive income. So I realized then the asset is wrong. It comes back to the quote that Warren Buffett says, and I hope I don't butcher it. It says, it doesn't matter how hard you row, it matters what boat you get into. So if you're thinking it like that, and you're thinking, well, residential real estate is awesome for capital growth, but if I need something to cash flow, there must be a better way. And then I found James Dawson's property course, right? So I did that property course probably about 5 years ago or something. And that really opened my eyes to Commercial property, how much it cash flows and how much you can force value onto the asset. So with residential property, you can't force value onto it unless you're developing something or subdividing it or doing a light renovation. It's not like you can't calculate it, right? It's not
You
like
can't
as
just
simple as that.
basically
Yeah.
increasing the rent's
Yeah.
not necessarily going to increase the value of the
Yeah,
property. I mean, it
it's
might a
on
little bit.
comparables. So it's on comparables, and it's also a emotional asset. So if someone's at a auction and their child wants the property more, they'll just pay overs for it for no real reason. Like it's just
That'd
absurd.
That'd be
Whereas
me. I'd be like,
commercial,
if the child wanted more, I'd be like, look, you save up and you buy it yourself, mate. Settle down.
yeah. So with commercial property, you actually can force value onto the asset by increasing the rent. So I've actually figured out, like, since I was last on the show with you guys, and I've been speaking to investors every single day through the buyer's agency, I've actually figured out an even simpler way to understand how to add value to commercial property. Okay.
What's this?
Are you ready for it? So commercial property is like a business. If you bought a business, right, and you increase the revenue of the business, you would expect that business to be more valuable, right?
Yep.
I would say so.
Commercial property is exactly the same. It's valued like a business. If you increase the revenue, the value follows. It's like a law of gravity.
When you say revenue, do you mean rent basically? Is that
net revenue? Yeah, net rent. Yeah. So if everything stays the same, all the expenses, all the outgoings that are paid by the tenant, if you increase the net income, the net revenue, whatever you want to call it, then the value of the property does increase. It has to.
Why don't more people think about it that way? Or do people think about it?
I'm trying to explain it so to make it as simple as possible to understand. Because I think even the last time I spoke to you guys on the channel, I don't know if some people really took that into account. Like, it's literally just an income play. Like, increase the net lettable area, increase the income, increase the value. It's that simple. Like, it's just a really simple formula.
So why aren't more people involved in the commercial space?
I don't know. I think there's a barrier to entry, which is big, right? There's also a bad stigma. Means it costs more money to get in. And there's a bad stigma around it, as in like prolonged vacancy if you do it wrong. Because with commercial property, it's not like residential property. So if you buy a bad residential property, you make a mistake. Usually time will wrong that right, or right that wrong, sorry. With commercial property, it can literally just stay wrong forever. Like, literally. If the property that you buy is not desirable by a tenant on day one, then chances are in 10 years, it's not going to be desirable and it's just going to stay vacant forever. So there's a stigma around prolonged vacancy. And just so the listeners know, with industrial property right now, the fundamentals for industrial property have never, ever been better in Australia. Record low vacancy, as in like 1% and under in places in parts of Australia, and huge demand on the assets and a scarce resource. There's not enough like industrial property for people to actually tenant. So the fundamentals for like industrial property are so great that the rents are going up, the demand is going up, and the values are going up. Does that make sense?
Simple.
It is. It literally is simple.
So should we get into talking? Have we got enough background yet, Joe? Should we talk about the deal itself and what led up to finding the deal? Is that where we go next from here?
Let's go to that, because I'm interested about why. So you're just talking about industrial and it being best thing, sliced bread. One thing is how is commercial connected to the economy? Like how should we think about that? Because typically what I've heard is if the Australian economy is not doing so well, commercial property doesn't do.
Well, you could say that for real estate in general. You know, it depends on the interest rates. So real estate is real estate, you know, whether that's commercial or residential. If the economy is going in the toilet, then usually it's very hard to get lending. So both asset classes will take a hit, right? But in terms of like how commercial property rides residential like booms. So usually what happens is a residential like part of Australia will boom, or it's going really well. And then there needs to be services in that area for that residence like to be there, right? So commercial property in that area will have an uplift. So commercial property rides the coattails of residential property, which is really nice. So if you can see that a place in in Australia is doing really well with residential property, then you can rest assured that usually the commercial property in that area will be getting a bit of an uplift. So like say working from home movement in coastal areas, there are a lot of cafes that are doing very well right now because there's more population there and there's more people going to those cafes. So that business is doing well, you know?
Can we unpack this one for Malachi? I think I understand. I think I can answer it. But
what's he saying? So it doesn't happen in Resi that you're saying. Your LVR improves increased rent, but you're saying that value of the property.
Essentially, yeah, that's what we're saying. Because you got to think about residential property. There's 70% of Resi property, and that's a ballpark number. 70% is owner op. There you go. Jenny just nailed it. Didn't even need to answer it. So basically, an owner occupier doesn't care whether their property could rent for $1,000 a week or $800 a week. They just care that it's close to the private school that they want their kids to go to, or it's close to where a nice sort of national park. It's got that sort of that feel good factor, and it's close to transport and infrastructure sort of kind of things. So whether the property will rent for, I think that answers. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and also it's also commercial is driven a lot by like a higher tier of people, right? What's the typical lending structure?
Typically, it's a 70% LVR you're going to be looking at for properties that are over 1.5 million, right? So there are some lenders that for properties under 1.5 million, you actually can get up to an 80% lend, right? So that's really nice in commercial property. That's a very, very high LVR, right? So usually you'd be 70% or below, depending if you want to get recourse finance or not. So recourse finance is a 60% LVR, and then you're actually, if the asset fails, it's not on you, the borrower, it's only on the asset. So it's non-recourse against you.
Non-recourse. I agree. Non-recourse.
Yeah. So what a lot of investors do, they'll take a high LVR and then they'll refinance back into, and they'll add value and they'll refinance back into non-recourse to limit the risk on themselves.
Yeah, not the legal liability folks here. But
I don't give financial advice, but to give you a bit of context for the people listening, a $1.5 million property at a 30% LVR, $450,000 deposit.
70% LVR. 30% deposit.
30% deposit. You'll need.
So there's a barrier to entry. That's the problem. So and don't get me wrong, one of the best ways to get into commercial property is build up a portfolio of residential property, wait for time to do its thing, refinance or sell down to move into a higher investment grade asset. Commercial property is a higher investment grade asset. If you look at anyone who has created 10, 20, $30 million portfolios, they are using commercial property in those portfolios at some point, right? They may not have started there, but I'm telling you right now, every single person who is on Australia's richest list that has like really made it, hundreds of like billions of dollars, they're using commercial real estate.
I mean, but that's just like any asset. I'm sure if you had $1 billion, I'd be in everything. No,
but they made their money through property. So they made a lot of money through property.
Chip shop, Joe, mate. You go in.
I don't have every single strip along the road. I don't all get freebies. But you're right. Yeah, there's definitely it's just, I guess that's one thing to put is there is a high barrier to entry, and when you're buying a $1.5 million property, you can typically, do you see this where the investor is just pure numbers from a commercial standpoint, where owner occupiers and residential is more emotional? People don't really care in commercials. No, my yield needs to be 5%. That's the price of this property to be $1.5 million. And as soon as you drop it below that, I'm not interested. They're walking away.
That's right. So it's less emotional. And if the numbers don't stack up, then you just walk away and go to the next deal. There'll always be a next deal. So typically, like right now, we're buying property between 6 and 6.5% return on face value. So if you're doing a $1.5 million property, you're getting $90,000 of net income, right? Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
But you still have to pay the mortgage after that.
When we say net, though, we're not talking net of borrowing costs, so this excludes your interest, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's net
Anyway.
income, and then you still have to pay the mortgage, which is then cash flow. So the cash flow is it's gone through the fire, and that's the gold. But net income is how you value the property.
Love it. So that's just a kind of high level brief overview of commercial. Let's talk about this. Like, how did you get into storage works? Like, how storage facilities? That's essentially what we've purchased. How'd you get into that, and why storage? Why do you love it?
Well, because right now it's my investment thesis, right? So I went from residential to commercial, then I've like niched down again to self-storage because right now I believe and I do know that for me, it's the best way to create really good wealth and it works for me and my plan, right? So because self-storage is a month-to-month lease at scale, you can manipulate the value very, very quickly. You don't have to wait for a rental review every single year to change the value. Okay. So that means that on day one, I can start changing the rents for anyone who's already been in the facility for 1 month. And that's how you manipulate the rates very, very quickly. If this was a standard commercial like asset and there's a standard like 3-5 year lease, I'd only have one opportunity to increase the rent, right? And I'd have to figure out a different way to add value. So it limits you on the time that you can turn this around and add huge value to the asset, right? So back in the day, I think it was around episode 8 or 10, I actually interviewed an absolute, like, he's my digital mentor for self-storage, AJ Osborne. He at the time he owned about $100 million of self-storage back in the day. Like this is like 2-3 years ago. And now he's like tripled that. Like he's just ridiculous. And his content is ridiculous. And I basically just carbon copied exactly what he does. And I've just done the whole thing in Australia. You know what I mean? But self-storage in America is very, very different to self-storage in Australia. So it's much more mature asset, right? So because self-storage originated in America, it's like there's parts that are oversaturated with self-storage, whereas Australia is like 10 years behind America with self-storage. So usually in Australia, there's not enough self-storage to go around in most markets.
Is it a month lease? Sorry, did you say that? If I wasn't listening,
Yeah.
Is it a month lease in self storage?
100%. Yeah. So a month lease sounds scary, doesn't it? Oh God, they can leave after a month. Yeah, it seems scary. But when you have 125 of them, how many? If I increase the rents, how many of those do you think will leave in 1 month?
Well, it's bloody painful to move stuff. I don't like moving stuff. It's like
So a month-to-month lease is risky, but when they're done at scale, it's not. It's very, very, it limits the risk significantly. And I have 125 tenants. Actually, I have 130 tenants. I have 125 units. So I have 130 tenants, and it's like a conga line, right? So this is the way I look at it. So at the end of at the front of the conga line, there's the mortgage repayments, right? And I have 130 people stacked in front of me that can go get a drink, they can leave, they can do whatever they want. And there's still going to be at least 100 people in front of me to pay the mortgage. That's what I want. That minimizes risk, right? Where in a commercial tenancy or a residential tenancy, there's usually one person or one tenant in front of me in my conga line. And then I'm at risk of having to pay the mortgage. I want as many people stacked in front of me, as many tenants as possible. And that limits the risk significantly.
Yeah. And then how many people in that conga line can get taken away before you are like, oh,
at least 60%. So it's a lot. So it'd be like catastrophic, like absolute record, like exodus of a self-storage facility for like 60% of my tenants to leave all on the same day in 1 month. Like it's just not realistic.
I think as well, Joe, the people are. I mean, I shouldn't generalize here, but from what I understand, there is somewhat of a move, maybe not so much in Australia, but there may be towards smaller living spaces because like apartments are being built. And all that stuff.
This is exactly what I was just exactly what I was just going to say. Like, I am so sold on self-storage. It'll be a space that I get myself into, and commercial is where I see a lot of top tier investors that I work with go and transition. Like becomes a part of their portfolio. You don't need to be an expert in commercial right now. Know that there is commercial, like it's worthwhile having these chats, but exactly that reason. Houses are getting smaller, block sizes are getting smaller, but people still want boats. They still want big TVs, still spend a lot of money. Still one of the most consumerist societies in Australia. So when your block is now from 800 to 400, where are you going to put all your stuff? It has to be, you're going to have to store it somewhere unless you sell down and we change the way that. But we're not.
And people get very emotional about their things as well. So it might look like junk, but it is an emotional like kind of thing. You bought it. You know, it might have been for your child. It could be your kids' toys. You do want to keep it, you know, so it's, and the way that the society works is now buying now and paying later is a huge part of our society. So there's no reason why people won't keep on buying things. Online, Amazon has like changed the game with like one-click buys, you know, so it's a lot easier to buy things. And there's also a really high utilization of businesses. So I probably have about 20 or 25 businesses that operate out of my self-storage facility, right? So they don't want to take on a big lease, a 12-month, 24-month lease. They just like the month-to-month how it works. And they can have different people come and pick up like their trades, pick up from their actual unit. I actually have a junk mail pamphlet delivery business running out of my self-storage facility. So
could you kick them out, man? I'm sick and tired of getting these damn plumber.
If you get junk mail and you're in the Wollongong region, it's come from my facility. I can tell you right now.
Every second week, I'm like, okay, mate. Like I know you're a plumber. Like I probably won't call you because your pamphlets have annoyed me.
Yeah, well, this is like, you know, your Coles pamphlet, your Aldi pamphlet, your Woolworths pamphlets, they all come out of my facility. So every Thursday, there's a truck that comes, that drops up a couple of pallets of pamphlets. Then every so often, they call them walkers. So they come in and they grab their run and then they take it and then they drop them off all around Wollongong.
Jesus,
that's crazy.
But so how, can I ask a question? Check the background noise. Oh, Jesus. Is that the cicadas again?
I can just hear these bloody cicadas. Yeah, the background noise button.
Yeah, I can hear cicadas actually. Now that you've mentioned
just imagine just every poor listener just sat here listening to crickets.
Is that better? Should be good.
Kinda. Let's see. Anyway, sorry, I sent that message to not shut down the show.
So should we get into the actual property? Because
let's get into the deal. How did you start your search on this thing?
Tell us about the numbers.
What were you looking for, and what did the search criteria look like for you?
So this is not something that happens overnight, right? So I've been understanding first I have to understand how self-storage is run and how I can actually add value to it. So then I can figure out exactly what I'm looking for. And then once I knew that, that took a couple of years. Like, truthfully, like this is a lot of hard work that's gone into this to be able to understand and minimize my risk, because the more I know about self-storage, it minimizes my risk. So if you're going into it on day one, that's your first day at self-storage, high risk because you don't know what you're doing, right? So I've done this before. I've done a couple of self-storage projects in the past. I've also had quite a few self-storage facilities under contract. A couple of deals has failed. Like, this is not the first time I've tried to do this.
We had you on the show.
Yeah. So
a massive one, South Australia.
You know, so basically the formula is finding a property that's under rented. It's an underperforming business, and you know that the owner is not doing the right things, right? So they're lazy, they're old, they've been running it for a long time, they've got a manual system. These are kind of like things that you want to see, right? So basically the facility, if you know the market rates of the facility and you can see that they're, say, $600 or $500 for this particular unit, a full garage 3x6, and then you look at this asset and you realize that, hang on, he's actually only renting it for $350, then there's the money leaving, that he's leaving a lot of money on the table there. You know what I mean? So and when he's doing that at scale, so 125 units, 130 customers that are all around 50 or 40% under market value, then that's what you're looking for. Because I know that when I come in, I can add technology, I can add my property management system, I can have a higher collection rate of revenue every single year, every single month, and I can increase the value over time by just increasing the rent and doing the right things that a business owner should do.
Yeah. So when you were looking out there, what was the criteria that you were looking for? So you were looking for one, an underutilized asset.
Yeah.
That an older person who's using paper and pen rather than
Just
digital
anybody, I suppose.
technology and stuff like. So how would
Well,
you
first,
describe your criteria?
okay.
So if I came up to you a year ago, hey Andrew, what are you looking for? What would
Yeah.
that
So
be?
first thing is scale. So there has to be significant scale. So about around 100 units is good, and it has to be, basically, probably doing around $300,000. And it has to be significantly underperforming as the business, right? So it might be run down. It might need a facelift. It might be in a market where there's the big boys, the big players that are in the market, and they can take the rates up for me, and I can ride their coattails, right? So all the big players in this market, National Storage, Storage King, Kennards, they set the rates for me, right? And I'm just keeping up with them. That's it. I'm not going overs. I'm actually going under them, but they've pushed the rates so significantly. And because this old owner hasn't kept up with those rates, he's literally left around $3 million on the table. Like, that's not even a joke. Like, that's literally what he's left. Because this asset should be worth around $9 million if it was managed and run correctly and kept up with the big boys.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you find someone like that? How do you find an underutilized asset? Like, surely they're not going to say, hey, yeah, I've got a $5 million commercial self-storage. I run it really poorly.
Yep.
Like, how do you, what's the search bar? What do I type into real commercial? What do I type into Google?
So once you find, just basically being able to find a self-storage facility for sale is a win, because they don't come up very often. So it's an asset that not many people sell because the business is so lucrative and there's not that many of them. They're hard to find. So you might be lucky if a new self-storage facility comes for sale every single month, right? That's actually happening more now. Before it was like every 2 months, every 3 months. And they're hard to find, right? So that's the first thing. There's not enough deal flow. That's the big problem in self-storage. There's not enough assets to buy, right? But then once you find an asset, you have to do the market research. If you don't do the market research, then you won't understand the opportunity, right? So what I do is, when I find an asset, I actually do market research, as in, like, I list every single other facility in the area, and then I call them and secret shop them. So I have a big spreadsheet for every single size of unit. And then what I do is I ring them and pretend that I need self-storage. And I have a whole story and a whole script that I put together, and it's the same every time. So the storage facility is for my mum. I'm not exactly sure how much space she needs. She's moving from like a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. She might need it for this amount of time or whatever. And then they tell me what they think they need, what I need for that size. And then once they tell me, I'm like, okay, so do you have many of those available? And they tell me how many they have available. And then I say, okay, so if we do need a bigger size, like, what would the price be for that per month? And then they tell me. And I said, okay, are many of those available? Or like, and like, so do you have any other options on at the facility that I could use or something?
Yeah,
and then they tell me those. Well. Yeah. So, hey,
I've got a caravan as well.
Yeah, I've got a caravan. So how much does it cost to store a caravan there? Like, I might also want that option. So I secret shop them, and then I can plot exactly what they're charging for their rates, right? So this is also good.
Online though? Like, do you actually have to call people?
No, not every summer. So National Storage is online. Storage King is not. Kennards in some markets is. But you're looking at all the other players around as well. So it's not just the big players. It's the no name or the one branded storage facilities. And then once you have this information, this is also good for 2 things. So you can benchmark where the self-storage facility is that you're buying. And then after that, you can also target the self-storage facility that's the lowest rent in the market as well. So you could start trying to call them, contact them, send them letters to try and get a deal over the line, make contact with them, because at the end of the day, it is a business. They will want to sell it eventually at some point. If they don't have any kids, they want to gift it to, inherit it, then they will need to sell it. So if you are friends with them and you're friendly with them, you might be the first point of call, which is really interesting. So if you know that they're very, very under rented from the start, and the big boys are way up at $500 for a single garage, and they're only charging $200. Well, that's a good asset to buy, because you're just literally increasing the rents over time. It's just a really simple formula.
So how do you think about, if I see Storage King, Kennards, and then your asset right next to it, I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of storage. That's an oversupply of storage unit. How do you think about that? Because it seems like there's a few around you, but you're not worried about oversupply for.
Well, this is part of the market research. So you're asking, how vacant are you? How many of those units do you have available? Do they come vacant a lot? And then you gauge exactly how much they have, right? So I have a column in the spreadsheet where I estimate how much storage, how full they are. So they might be 90% full, 95% full, stuff like that. And I have a spreadsheet after I've got all this information. I have a spreadsheet that I call the opportunity calculator, and I've actually got it here. I can present it to you and show you if you'd like.
Let's have a look.
No? Have a look.
No, go.
Present it?
Yeah. Click the button. Show us the goods. So this is what you use to find your opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. I'm clicking the button.
Well, if you're on the podcast, you probably want to jump on.
All right. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, maybe just hit Command Plus and just.
Is it right now?
That's better.
Okay. So this is basically the spreadsheet that I use. So right now, these were the current rates that I was buying Fairy Meadow at, right? So this is the sizes. So it's 4x6, 3x6, goes all the way down. And then this is the quantity that I have of fixed units. And then this is the old rates. This is the rate per square meter, because in self-storage, particularly in America, they break it down to the cents for 365 days. It's not done per annum. So this is why this rate per square meter is under $1. And around that dollar mark is the real sweet spot to try and get your facility up to, right? So $1 per rate. So, and then this is the monthly.
Vary per area?
It does. It does. It does vary. Yeah. But around the dollar mark is the golden rule of thumb. If you can get the rate per square meter up to $1, you're doing really well. And all the big boys are around there. So then this basically tells me exactly the size, the quantity that I have, how much monthly income I'm getting, and how much yearly income I'm getting, right? So see here for the 3x6, I have 30 of them. So that's a lot of the income. Okay. And then this is exactly what the information I had on the facility that when I purchased it, or when I put it under option. And then I overlaid my actual market rates over it, right? So now these are the realistic rates that are being charged in the market today. And I know that because down here, I've done my rate comparison, right? So I've listed out all the sizes that I have, and I made comparisons to what the leading competitor is getting, charging, right? So you can see leading competitor is doing 125. Our rates, he was charging 95. There's $25 per month left on the table, right? And you go down and look at the numbers: 25, 20, 65, 61, 50, 101, $220 per month he's leaving on the table, $250. Even this one here, this is a bulk. This is a bulk building. Yeah, I've got a 100 square meter bulk warehouse on site as well. That is extremely under rented, right? So the rate per square meter for a bulk warehouse in Wollongong at a very, very good rate is about $250, right? So realistically, he's only getting $1,185 per month, but the leading competitors, or every other person that's got a warehouse, would be charging around $2,083 per month. So this particular building, right, I'm just going to be increasing the rates by $10,000 per year, and it's going to increase the value of the property by $300,000, just by increasing the rates on this particular tenancy, because it's one tenancy in this building, right? So it's like really considerable. So you can see like the difference. So if you're doing the rate comparison and you're getting differences like this, you know there is money left on the table. And as I said, it's month-to-month leases. So I can manipulate these as I see fit as soon as I take over the asset, right? So back to the actual market rates, you can see here, I've just overlaid the rates that everyone else is charging in the market, which is fair market rate because people are buying it. There's not enough storage around. There's a high occupancy. So realistically, I've turned this asset from here. I valued it at about 6 million at a 5.5 cap, and that was conservative. And I had it under contract for 5 million. So the way that it actually worked was I actually tried to take this asset down with just one money partner at the start. I didn't go in with this strategy. Like I had to creatively put it together, right? And then when the rubber hit the road, when we were supposed to actually start putting money down, the money partner that I had got cold feet, right? So then I basically had no funding to do this. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got to figure out a creative way to do this. So that's how I came up with this.
I feel there's a couple of steps we've sort of. So how did it sort of go? Like this was the non-market property, just on real commercial, I imagine. Or like how did you?
This particular property was on market. Yeah, so this particular property was on market. It actually came up, and because I did the research and
this is not the one you purchased, right? Just
it is. This is
oh,
exactly the number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is the property. This is Fairy Meadow. This is Alliance Self Storage. So it actually came up on a listing portal, and just like any other property, and a lot of people were looking at it, but I don't think anyone really understood the full opportunity and did the research like I did and realized how valuable it was. So they originally wanted 6 million for it, and I got it under contract for 5, right? And so it was under contract. We were about to start putting money down, and then my money partner got cold feet and backed out. So I'm like, okay, this is a problem. I've got to figure out a creative way to do it, right? So I figured out that if I can make the deal so good for them, for every single party in the deal, and they would feel silly saying no, then I should be able to get this over the line. So that's what I did, because I could figure out that this asset that I valued at 6 million, right? It's easily a $6 million asset on face value alone if you understand the full, like, you know, what it was doing. And I've overlaid my rates, and it's actually worth this. Then this just takes into account increase of rates. This doesn't take into account creating more units. So, and saying that, I've actually valued it at 8.7 just by putting market rates into it. Then I can pay pretty much, you know, $1 million, $2 million over asking, because I know the asset's actually worth 8.7.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
a couple of phone calls and emails to right.
Yeah. So once you understand how valuable the asset is, if it's worth 8.7 just on putting market rates over, like overlaying that on the asset, then, and you've already valued it at like 6 million, then paying an extra $700,000 to make it look like you're paying a lot more, but realistically you're not, it made sense. So they felt.
How did they agree to 5? So you got it under contract for 5 million. So they agreed to that amount of 5 million.
They agreed to it.
Why do you need to up it?
Because I had to put it on. Because I said to them, I'll give you a better price, but I need time. Right.
Okay.
So because I needed
fell through and you could not execute the contract originally, and they're saying, well, we've got 20 people knocking on our door.
Yeah,
they want to
probably
buy
not
this.
20, but 1 or 2 maybe.
Yeah, well, you would have.
It wasn't that many. Yeah, so it was like 1 or 2 people that were looking at it. They still weren't. They weren't at 5. They were a little bit lower anyway. And I said, okay, so I'll give you price if you can give me time, if you can give me my terms, and I did. So what I actually did was, I'll go down to this bit. So I created a new offer for them.
Yeah.
All right. So this is exactly what I did.
How did they come up with 6 million? Because you said they wanted 6 million. Where did they come up with the 6 million number?
That's at a 5.5 cap, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they wanted 6 million at the very start. It had been for sale for a little while, and they needed to move the property reasonably quickly because the old owner had wanted to buy a property in Foster that he wanted to move to. So there's a few moving parts on this. Yeah, there was motivation there. So if he lost the contract with me, he had potential to lose his deal as well. So there was motivation there from the start. And I got a lot of buy-in from the agent. The agent is absolutely an excellent dude. He really understands putting together a deal. And when I realized that, he said to me, like, well, there's a lot of ways to put together a deal. I was like, that's my in. Like, as long as I can get his buy-in. So the whole weekend, I figured out a best case scenario, like proper, like basically option deal for them, so they would feel so stupid, like saying no. So what I did is I increased the purchase price by 700,000. I paid. I'm going to pay rent. I'm paying rent to the actual owner of 80,000 per year. Now, the Fairy Meadows sales commission, the agent will actually get more money because it's a higher purchase price.
Yeah, he's getting 700,000.
There was a mortgage on the property already, so that just canceled it out. And the property that the owner of Fairy Meadow was buying at Foster, I also negotiated for them to actually have a higher price as well. So they originally had the Foster property under contract for $2,299,000, and I said I'll pay 5.7 million, but the Foster people need to buy into this because there's a long settlement on that property as well. Okay, so we have to pay them more, so they're getting 2.7 instead of 2.2, and also,
so you paid $500,000 them more.
Yeah. Because
and then 700,000. So it's not even.
So no, I'm not paying it. So all the proceeds are coming out of the sale for Fairy Meadow, which is 5.7. But out of that money, the owner of Fairy Meadow is paying the Foster vendors more money for their property, so they can have buy-in to be able to give us a 12-month settlement on the property that he was buying, right? Yeah. So I needed to make it so much sweeter for everyone. So the Fairy Meadow vendor, the way that it worked out was he'll get $342,000 more from the new offer, right? The Foster vendor, he's going to get $453,000 more, right? And I'm also paying $1,000 rent every single week for him to live there on a 12-month settlement. And the only reason I can do this is because the self-storage facility cash flows so much that I had $30,000 of income that I can literally use. I use that as my ammo. So as long as I kept it under that, like 30,000, I can use that money to pay this. I can use that money to pay this, right? So this is how I'm actually doing this out of pocket, right? No money out of pocket. It's all getting paid by the self-storage facility, right?
You are my type of people. This is
so now going down the Fairy Meadow. So now going down to the next person. So everyone's getting more money. So the Fairy Meadow agent actually is getting $34,000 now. So he's getting a higher commission, and I'm also paying him $20,000 on settlement as well, right? So he's getting $34,000 from this deal, but he has to wait for his money, right? So you got to wait, but you're getting like a lot more money. And the Foster agent is also getting $20,000. I'm going to pay him on settlement as well. So I've sweetened the deal so much for everyone that they're getting so much more.
Threw in an extra $20,000 on top of already the sale.
On top of already the money he was getting and he's getting a higher commission as well. So instead of getting,
can I throw some objections out there though? Because I'm just thinking, if I'm the owner of this place, and I suppose he's kind of motivated and all that sort of stuff, but I'm thinking, why don't I ask for more? If you're bending over backwards to do all these things, I mean, maybe he doesn't know that you're not doing this. Why don't you just say, hey, look, the price is now $6 million instead of 5.7?
Because the owner of the Foster property was also committed to a downsizing property that they were buying, so they couldn't muck around either. So moons did align. I'm not saying this is easy to put together. No. It's not. Getting any property under option is very difficult. I've tried a lot in the past. It's a very, very difficult feat to do. If you can get one option done in your career, you're doing well. But you have to sweeten the deal so much that they feel stupid, like saying no, right? Yeah, so if you're getting $28,000, you're getting $34,000. You're literally getting $453,000, and you're like a retiring. You're an age pensioner. You'll never have a chance to make that money in your life ever again. The old owner of Fairy Meadow is getting $342,000 more than the original deal. Why would you say no to this? So I gave them price, I gave them money, they gave me terms, and they gave me time. Because I know that I've put this, like, the purchase price, like $5.7 million. That won't change. It's in stone now. And I'm getting all of the benefits of owning the property by adding value to it, increasing the rents, which adds the value. So I've already got $1.3 million of equity created in this property by just increasing the rent already, right? So the property right now is doing 386,000 net divided by 0.055, 7 million, right? Take away 5.7.
Question I have is about made $1.3 million in 4 months.
That's just manipulating the rents. Like, that's what I said. Commercial property is like a business. If you increase the revenue,
let's say optimizing it. Manipulating, I don't know. It's a funny, but yeah.
Yeah, just move all that aside. So how did we decide on a 5.5% cap? Like, who said?
Because that's the market rate. That's the market. Actually, in Wollongong, for industrial asset, you're probably looking at a sharper, like, cap rate. So you're looking at closer to a 5 cap. I'm being conservative by going 5.5, right? So I'm making sure that I have enough buffer, like meat on the bone, to make sure that, you just want to be conservative when you're underwriting these deals. I'm very, very conservative. So realistically, I'm surprised
it's not higher. I mean, with a 5.5% cap on a self-storage.
Wollongong's king, Joe. Wollongong is king, mate. Of course. It's like blue chip, mate. Blue chip.
Taking over a full business, though. Like, you have to actually be the business owner. So I expected a lot more.
Is it more about the location or the asset? Like, let's just say in like a more regional, let's say Rockhampton. Maybe that's not regional, but maybe it's probably more regional Wollongong. Okay. Would you probably haven't looked up? Would you say a cap rate on a self-storage up there would be a bit higher than 5.5%, the market rate?
Definitely, yeah. So it depends on the market that you're going into, because Wollongong is so close to Sydney. You could call it a second tier market, but it's actually more like a 1.5 tier market. So like going into like Wollongong, to be able to get something under like contract for around 5 to 6%, you are doing very, very well. Like, that's a really good yield. If you're going into like Rockhampton or like Townsville or something, you'd be like 7 or 7.5. Like, so cap rate is a reflection of risk in the market, or perceived risk. So if you're going in as an investor, if I'm going into Rockhampton, I need to get a higher return to take the risk that I have to take to buy into that market, right? Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So could you guys actually? I actually changed to a different screen. Could you guys actually see when I was going through?
We can just add it in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I changed to a different screen and I was showing you like exactly the offers and stuff like that, and I thought you could see it.
Oh no, we didn't see that. All we can see is the spreadsheet.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Hang on. What I want to do, I just want to quickly just show you this, because
I want to see it all.
Yeah, because this is exactly what I put together for the selling agent. This is exactly what I sent to him. Wow. So this is, I thought you guys could see this when I was speaking about it. Sorry, I didn't realize. It's blurry, is it?
Just before we dive into this, I think it's going to talk to a little bit context. Is the original offer you had was for $5 million, and then you changed the offer because you couldn't do that offer anymore, and then you put an option on the property. Can you just quickly describe what an option is, and then let's go into this?
Yep, sure.
Yeah, so I suppose that's a good point, because we all know what an option is, but because we've been talking about this ages. And tell us how you actually presented, because tell us all the details of an option.
Okay. So an option is the right to purchase a property. It's a contract that you set up with a vendor, and you can have a call or put, right? Some people will try and have both in there, but it really defeats the purpose. So you only want a call option agreement. Call means that you can execute it. You can initiate the sale. A put means that the owner can force you to buy. So it's basically, if you have both of them in the contract, it's like a contract of sale. So you only want a call option agreement. So you as the owner or of the call option agreement can execute it. And you can also sell that right to purchase. So
Yeah.
I have multiple exit strategies for this particular project, right?
Let's talk to those after we talk to the offer.
Okay.
We'll get a little, it's going to get confusing.
Yep.
But so you said, look, I can't give you $5 million. I need more time because I need to get more money partners. I need to work out what the heck I'm going to do.
Figure out how I'm going to
I
pay
need
for this
the
thing.
finance side of things, and I can't do it. And they're like, well, you got to make it a pretty good deal. And you're like, cool,
Yep.
I'm going to make it a good deal. It's going to look like this. So
That's right.
What is the new deal?
So the new deal was, I went just through before, but so the Fairy Meadow vendor would get $342,000 extra, right? So he's not only getting 5.7 that he's got to use to buy his property that he's buying, but he's also getting $80,000 of rent per year as well. So I pay him $6,607 monthly income, right? And then he's also he's basically got $342,000 more on the new offer. Now, when I go down to the Foster vendor, they're getting $453,000 more because we changed the property purchase price for their property from 2.2 to 2.7 or 2.69. So that also was an increase for them, right? So they're like, okay, that's pretty cool. I will allow a 12-month settlement because I'm making $450,000 more in 12 months, right? And I'm also paying them like a rental fee, right? So I'm paying them $52,000 per year for this 12-month settlement, which is $1,000 per week, right? And all the self-storage facility is paying for this, not coming out of my bank account. It's coming out of the self-storage facility because I don't need the funds, right? I'm not particularly using them for my lifestyle. It's all going back into the asset for marketing, for getting the deal over the line, right? So then the Fairy agent,
we've got the vendor, then we've got the Fairy Meadow agent. We've got to let him know.
Now the agent, he's getting paid more because he's got a higher sale price, which is good for him. But I needed to sweeten the deal a little bit more. So I negotiated that I'll pay him $20,000 at the end when we settle the properties as well, right? So he's getting $34,000 just on this deal, right? And then the Foster agent is also getting more money. He's getting a higher commission on the property. So he's getting 54,000 instead of, it was 54,000 instead of 45,000. And then he's also getting $20,000 more. So he's getting $28,000 more than the original offer as well, right? So he's getting $74,000 for this deal, right? So it just makes sense.
Is there some weird conflict when you're giving other agent $20,000, like you're paying the other person $20,000? Like, is there not a weird conflict where they're like, hell yeah, I'm now on your side, Andrew. I want this.
Not if everyone. Well, this is. We had an open discussion between all of the parties, so everyone knew about this.
So were you in communication with the other party, with the other, or were you doing it all through the agent?
So I was doing it. I was talking to the Fairy Meadow vendor, and also the selling agent for Fairy Meadow, and then the selling agent for Fairy Meadow was talking to the Foster people and taking that and organizing that part of it. I haven't spoken to them. I've spoken to the agent, but I haven't spoken to the actual vendor. So if everyone agrees that this is fine, because everyone was like, yeah, sure, pay us more money, sweet. You know, I'm like, great, just give me some time. Yeah, you get 20K, you get 20K, you get 20K. You know,
Didn't the vendor? Well, yeah, because I suppose then though the question is though, and this is probably what you're getting at, Joe, is wouldn't the vendors of all these kind of feel a little? I suppose they're all getting more money, so maybe that dispels.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what he's trying to convince them to do, and money talks, right? Like,
look,
to get. I mean, this vendor got 400. What was it? 400,000, $500,000. You know what? You still for a year, and I'm going to give you $500,000.
Yeah,
and you still go out there and buy your property. Like, I feel like you've been overly generous.
I needed to get it over the line because when you know that the asset is actually worth $9 million. Then you'll see that I didn't actually really give them much of a good deal, like realistically, because I know the asset is so valuable, right? And I can overlay my self-storage management on top of it. So what looked like to them was a great deal. And it was a great deal for them. It was a lot better deal than the original deal. And I still would have turned the asset into a $9 million asset. So I basically benchmarked them very low, which was still that they already accepted that. but then I've increased it so much. So like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, like, sure. Like I know I can like make it into a really good deal. So
Well,
they're like,
that's kind of where the vendor I've been like, oh, hang on a minute, like, well, what are we kind
why
of,
is he-
what am I
why is
missing?
he
What am
so
I missing
keen?
here?
well, but you've got to remember that the Fairy Meadow vendor of the
Needed to
self-storage
go,
facility, he's 75 years old. He's been doing it for 18 years and he'd had enough. So he
And he's
didn't
worked
really,
there for 20 years.
yeah, and he wasn't interested in doing the things to actually increase the value. So he didn't want to have the hard conversations with the tenants to increase their rates because he actually lived on site as well. So there's a 2-bedroom apartment on site, right? And he lived there and he became friendly with everyone, right? So it wasn't just business. It was about, friends and stuff. But he didn't want to increase the rates $200 a month, so he didn't want to do the hard things, manage the property well, put out signage, stuff like that, so.
Yeah. Can I address the slight elephant in the room that I think only slowly gotten bigger and bigger for me is that money partner cost you $700,000.
Not
Like,
really.
they fell through and you would have had it at 5 million.
Well, it depends on
They went
the
through.
agreement though, Joe.
But you would have had to have
The
put in
JV
plus
agreement
the
we
5.
had, I was going to make just over $1 million on the deal, and he was going to make majority of the money. So now I'm making all of the money. And also my investors. So my investors are making 15 to 22.5% on the capital that they put into it so far, which is only $150,000.
So you flicked it from a joint venture deal to a money partner deal. Is that what you sort of did?
Yeah, that's right. So it's more like a little group deal.
Before we go into that, let's jump into our final ad because I want to talk about how your exit strategies, how you've structured this, and talk to those.
And what you actually did what you're doing to the property as well. Because I mean, I listed that in your podcast, but be good for our audience to hear about it.
Sure,
100%.
It's fun. Come here, get a beer.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
Bananas, mate. Absolutely bananas. I feel like a lot of risk involved. I know that you've got a lot of numbers going. How do you think about the risk side of things on it?
Well, if you think about risk, right? Risk is really specific to the individual taking that risk or taking that leap of faith, right? So if you understand the asset, you've done the research on it, you know how to add value, you've done the market research, you've overlaid the current market rates, you've got a very big portion of tenants, the property is almost like 95% full right now, then all you have to do is execute your plan. There's actually very minimal risk. But if you said to me, hey, Andrew, go develop a 12-pack of townhouses, shit, that would be risky because I haven't done the research on that. You know what I mean? So it really determines what your actual skill set. The more skillful you are in that asset, lowers your risk.
Yeah, And also how got multiple exits. Like this
Yeah.
is
So
one of them was the option. So
yep.
put an option on there, and you said that you sell them.
Yeah, that's right. So the way that I've done it with different exit strategies, which is Joe is leading me into, the way that I've done it is there's a couple of different ways that I can actually get out of this deal with making quite a good return. So the main strategy is that I'm going to create such a huge discrepancy in value. So it's going to be a 60% discrepancy from value from 5.7 million to 9 million. That just happens to be a 60% LVR. Right. And it just so happens that I've spoken to many, many banks that they'd be willing to give me the whole purchase price of the 5.7 million if the valuation comes in at 9 million. Right. And I've also spoken to many mortgage brokers about this. And they said, yes, if you can do that, we believe we could get this over the line for you. So that's my first exit strategy. I have the bank fund the whole deal for me. I take it down. I own it for the rest of my life. And it turns into like a generational type asset for my family, right? Second exit strategy is I could bring in one money partner, right? So I could bring in one person. They know they're coming into huge equity. I could sweeten the deal like significantly. So they come in and they're my 50-50 partner, potentially. If I can't get that over the line, yeah, it could be you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, how much do you want from me?
You need to fund. You need about 3 mil. You need about 3 mil if the bank won't give me the 5.7, right? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a single money partner, single partner coming in. If I can't get that over the line, I could syndicate it, right? So I could get 19 other investors to put in small amount of money to syndicate the deal with me. The deal is cash flowing so much, I could give huge returns. And this is also what I basically already done to set it up. I've got 2 investors in already. I've got another guy coming in that was supposed to come in at the start, but he just because of timing didn't come in straight away. I could do that, right? And the very big fail safe that I put on this property to make sure that I could at least triple my money is I also negotiated in a 3-year lease on this property. So if I can't get a money partner, if I can't syndicate it, if I can't take it down myself, I've still got a 3-year lease on the property. So the property is literally returning or going to be returning. This year it'll do about 480 to 500. Next year it'll probably do about 550 and beyond, right? Now, if I actually go into the lease arrangement, a lot of my option expenses, like paying the rent, paying the extra money for the foster people, paying the mortgage on the property, because I pay the mortgage on the property right now too, right? Out of the self-storage funds. All of that will go away, and then I'll have about $400,000 of income just by managing this business. So I'll more than triple my money just by leasing it, right? So I have multiple exit strategies, all of which are going to make a lot of money, some of which are going to be more profitable than others. And just so you guys know, the big boys, National Storage, are already knocking on the door to take this down. They want me to sell the option. Oh, I forgot the option. I forgot one of the exit strategies. That's how many I have. I could also sell this option. So if I can't get a partner to come in with me, if I can't take it down myself, if I can't syndicate it, and I've still got the lease, right? Then I can actually sell the option agreement, right? So that's the beauty of an option agreement. So if I've got a property under option for 5.7, which I do, and I've got a valuation come back at 9 million, there's a good $3.3 million of value there of equity, right? And if I can say to you, hey, Joe, I'll sell you this right to purchase this property for 2 mil and you're buying 1.3 of equity, would you do it? Of course you would. So National Storage are already knocking on my door wanting to take this off me. You know what I mean? So, and I've already, the property's already worth 7 million just on the estimation of the net income that I've increased it to now. So I've got 1.3 of equity already created. You know what I mean? So it's pretty minimal risk from my point of view. I've covered quite a few bases.
Yeah.
You played
Well,
baseball as well, didn't you?
I'm like, how can I, like, how can you mess this up? Like, I don't know.
I put in so many different fail-safe like exit strategies because I need a high, high tolerance of stupidity. So anyone could do this. Like anyone can literally put this together. It's just the know-how and how to negotiate a deal, how to put a deal together, understanding how much value is left on the table for the asset, and anyone could put this deal together. So I was negotiating with cash flow from the asset that I never even had. So the property was supposed to be doing around $30,000 on face value. And when I came into the property, it had a very low collection rate because the actual owner was working off a manual ledger. So every single tenant, he would actually manually balance the account on a piece of manila cardboard, right? And he would also file it by name, not by unit number, which is bizarre. So he would actually miss out units that had never paid. So once I did my business handover, I found about 5 units that hadn't actually been paying for years. And he was so embarrassed about it. He's like, look, I don't know who's in this unit. I have no idea. So he's like, what I'll do is and he did this without me knowing, he'd just get a grinder and just whip the lock off, And so he'd just go into the unit and try and find a name in the unit. And he did for one of these units. And he's like, I remember when this person came in, it was about 5 years ago. And I haven't actually they haven't paid. They've done a runner and they haven't paid for 4 years, So things like that with bad management and no systems and operations triggering you to be able to understand this is the rent that's coming in for this asset unit. That's where the value is. If he ran this properly, it wouldn't be a deal. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about it.
Yeah,
he would have sold it for $9 million.
Somebody would buy it off him for $8 million.
That's right.
Be earning 500, or be earning sort of 480K income or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Can you do this? Okay, I'm gonna nothing to do. Can you go out there and do this kind of contracting work for self-storage people that are trying to sell their assets and just say, hey, give me a year and I'll up your property $3 million and I'll take 50% of the income that I generate.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I have thought about it. The work involved is a lot. It's significant. As you said before,
$1 million.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is.
You wouldn't want to do it yourself, though.
You want to retain the asset yourself. So you want to. There's a lot of money in owning the asset. There's not so much money in managing the asset solely, right? So, if you're doing it, yes, it would be valuable. But I think my time is better spent by taking down more deals and creating more value for myself and investors. But it is a good idea.
Yeah. So can we talk to some of the things I want to know, because obviously this is not a passive, and that's okay. I mean, I don't mind rolling my sleeves up and getting my hands dirty. But what are some of the, because you talk to this in some of your podcast, Commercial Property Show. What are some of the things that you did to actually sort of increase the management? You talked about 2 different things. One was the economic vacancy, and the other one was So could you talk to those things? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, sure. So there's people only look at vacancy as the physical vacancy or occupancy. But in self-storage and in commercial real estate, there's also something called the economic vacancy. And that basically means how much money are you getting in compared to the market rate, what you should be getting in, right? So in self-storage, predominantly, the physical occupancy is usually higher in Australia. It has been for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Self-storage has been on a great tear. And now it's come back to more of a normal market. So an 80% occupancy for a self-storage facility, that's the worldwide average, right? So that's a very, very thriving business, right? And this particular asset, it was 40 or 50% vacant, economic vacancy. So that means that the rent was 40 to 50% below what the market rates are. And if you can just understand that and figure that out, identify that, then you can increase to the market rate, right? And that's the main thing that you got to look for. And what owners tend to do is that they only care about the property being full, right? So that's their main benchmark. I'm full.
Factor.
Yeah, so I'm full. I'm 100% full. But the facility down the road, they might be 10% vacant or 90% full. But if they're charging $200 per unit more than you, then they've got a much better business than you. But on face value, if you ask them, oh, how many vacant units do you have? Oh, I've got 10 vacant of 100. Okay, so you're 10% vacant. Oh, well, and then the other person says, well, I'm 100% full. I must be doing better. But then they don't go down the line of like saying, okay, but you're charging $100 a unit. I'm charging $2, so I'm almost making double the amount of money from you. And I've still got the upside of that 10% to actually fill up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you can, if they had it fully rented out at the normal level, that's only at 50% or 40, whatever you said, percent.
Yeah.
So you've then got 40, 50% of value to push that next level. Crazy.
That's right. Yeah. So basically what I did from the start was the identification of that particular metric, the occupancy, the economic occupancy was vital, right? And then once I've taken over the asset, I've put in self-storage management software, right? So now I can remotely manage it, right? So instead of using a Manila card that's like doing an account like on the actual card and balancing it, that's difficult. This is why I have the opportunity, because he didn't know how to do it properly. So I put in, it takes a lot of time to set up this self-storage management. You have to enter all of the customer details, the prices, the unit prices, when they came in, all that kind of details. Very, very difficult to do. When you're buying off an owner that is an underperforming like business owner. So the information that you would think would be just the secondhand you should actually have, like the person's name, the email address, the phone number, the data was missing. Like there wasn't enough data in any one like data source to actually put it together. So I spent weeks like basically being an investigator, trying to get people's phone numbers, trying to get people's email addresses, just so I could put them into the property management system, right? So once you've done that, which was a very big task, now I have like automated operations and systems that just every single month they do an invoice for me, right? So previously the old owner, he would manually have to do the invoices through MyOb, right? He would for 120 or 130 tenants manually. My system just does it automatically, and I send it from one click.
Well, this is a good point. This is a good question. I think you have an answer. You use the Uber demand pricing when you apply. Like, how do you work that out?
Do you use the Uber demand pricing when units are in short
Like,
supply? Yes, that's right.
When Uber's like surge prices and you just pay $400
exactly
for a 5-minute trip, with done, but not done.
That's right. So self-storage is exactly like that. So it's like, I like to reference it like it's like prices on a plane. So if you're very, very like vacant, there's no one taking any of those seats in the plane, the prices are usually cheaper, right? But then when the plane starts to get fuller and fuller, the prices go up because there's more demand on the asset on the plane. Everyone's paying a different price. Yeah, so it's exactly the same. When I have multiple units available, I'll change the price, manipulate the price and take it down, right? So I'm on the phone, they say, how much is it? I'll say $450, right? But if I get that person in and I've only got one left, I might push it to like $495, okay? And then once you've got someone in and they've put their stuff in your unit, you have their things as collateral, right? So then in 3 months, 2 months, even 1 month, I can change the price to go up, right? So what people do, and what the real like trickery of self-storage is, they'll get you in at a very, very low rate, right? And they'll aggressively move you up in 3 months or so. So you might come in and, just for simple math, $100 for a unit. And then in 3 months, you're paying $400 because that's the real market rate, and they aggressively move you up. And the way that they want to do that is because they get people in a really low rate. They move the prices up. They know that they're going to have 30% of move out, and they keep on getting more and more and more turnover of low price to high price, low price to high price, because 70% of people will stay because it's hard to move. It's a pain in the ass getting a truck, moving stuff, getting in, like losing your whole weekend. It's difficult, so that's the way that self-storage is managed and operated. It's get you in low, move you up to the real street rate.
There you go.
What are the risks? Like what risks do you
in the deal itself, or self-storage?
Well, both.
In self-storage,
We covered.
the risk in self-storage is oversupply. That's the biggest risk. Okay, so self-storage is its own worst enemy. So if you're going into a market and the council has like really loose specifications or requirements, and you can develop a lot of self-storage, then there is a risk of like a market getting oversaturated. And if people aren't good operators, like they don't do the market research and they just develop it, and then they realize that they've developed the wrong size unit, and that's not the market, that the unit that's actually like in demand in that area, because self-storage is almost like a retail shop. It's a product that I'm selling to you. I'm selling you different sizes of that product, right?
Yeah.
So in a market, different markets have different sizes that do better. So the more regional markets, you'll have a larger unit because they have bigger things, more stuff to sell. In the more like city-centric, more hustle and bustle like places, it'll usually be a smaller unit. So in Wollongong, 3x3 units do really, really well, right? But in like, say, like a Foster, 6x3s do really well. You know what I mean? So you just have to understand the product market fit and make sure that you're developing the right market. If you're developing a self-storage facility and say there's like 1,000 square meters of net like lettable area, that's net rentable area of self-storage, and then you're like building a 800 square meter facility, well, then you're putting on like more than half, like 3/4 of that market, like you're that like net lettable area, and you might decimate that market because the market might not be able to handle that much extra storage. So self-storage in itself being oversupplied is its own worst enemy. But in Australia, we're probably about 10 years away where before we really have to start worrying about that, because the asset is in its infancy. It's not mature at all like it is in America.
So what stops me is, what is self-storage? Self-storage is just a box with a shed with a roller door. Like what stops me from just here it is, purpose-built facilities can only be where, well, just before we get to
I feel like it should be a question though. Like what do you sort of do?
Why can't I build my own? Why can't I just go out there and build my own? Like it costs
You can.
it costs $5.7 million. If I owned that block of land and I built a facility, surely that's not going to cost more than 5.7.
Well, how are you funding that though, Joe? Who's going to?
So you got to buy the land. You got to buy the land. You've also got to find a piece of land that in the council is permissible, right? So not a lot of councils like storage facilities, right? It's hard to get lending against self-storage. So banks will usually lend up to 50 or 60%, no more. That's it, right? So the lending is difficult. You got to buy the land. So you're looking at probably, for the size of facility, you're talking about easily over $1 million, if not more. And then the actual build out cost is going to be close to probably, if you're a multi-story self-storage facility, that could be well over $2.5 million easily. If you're building a concrete slab, like, you know, really, really nice SMIC self-storage facility with lifts and everything, very, very expensive, right? And then the problem with development is you have fill-up risk. So not only you might build the asset, it might come online, but if you don't know how to run self-storage and you don't know how to fill it up, then it could be 3 years before you fill up that asset, right? So you could be in a hole for 3 years. So this is why
getting that cash flow.
This is why buying an existing income stream that's underperforming is extremely low risk. Now, there's a third way of doing it, which is self-storage conversions. So you can convert a warehouse into self-storage. That comes with its own problems as well, because the building might have different specifications for fire safety. And then also you've got the fill-up risk, right? But if I go into an asset and I know it's a known income stream that I'm buying into, and I know it's underperforming, and I know that I'm better at managing self-storage business than the old owner, then that's minimal risk, right? Because I could at least do it as good as him. And this deal in Fairy Meadow, if I just did exactly the same things that he did and just did it exactly the same thing, it would still make sense. I could still pay every single bill without any worries, right? And I could still build a little bit of equity, and I could sell off the option for $500,000 or $1 million. Like it's just that simple.
Crazy.
A little bit.
What do you think? What are they in, Joe? You have exhausted all your questions, or you want to know more? Like,
Mate, I'm done. Sign me up. I'll take two. But it's crazy. Like if we started this with some dude buys a commercial property for $5.7 million and turns it into a $9 million asset with only $150,000. And that's why I wanted to get you on, because it sounds so ridiculous on paper, but when you go through it, it's so clear and obvious how exactly. And that, welcome to the real world. This is a business.
It is.
Let's start getting into some of the questions. This is not something you could do with a normal kind of 9 to 5. The searching and all of this education. But how many hours a week do you think you put in for the acquisition phase, and then how much do you put in the management phase once you own this?
The upfront, like,
how many deals did you look at before this one came along? Like,
well, I've been trying to do this for probably about 3 or 4 years, so a lot.
Wow.
So it's a lot of time that goes into it. A lot of time you don't feel like you're getting ahead. You're just basically in like researching education mode. And now I've changed seasons and I'm in the doing mode, right? So I'm like taking control and I'm actually doing. You know what I mean? So it does take a long time to find the right asset. If it's the wrong asset, you can burn yourself. So it has to make sense, right?
Okay.
Could I ask a question? Like, what so how many hours did you actually? Yeah, we kind of didn't even answer the question. Like, how many hours do you kind of work on?
So, I mean, I didn't count the hours to put into the acquisition. I was doing it every single day for 5 months, putting together this deal. So whether that was 2, 3, 4 hours a day, I was thinking about it constantly. So a lot of time. And then now that it's all set up and like once I acquired it, I took off about two weeks from my old job that I was doing, and just did this as the business handover. And then at night I was still doing all of my usual stuff, podcasting and all that kind of stuff. But that was a huge amount of time. And then now during the day, I probably I take calls. So it's like, this is a business. It's a fully functioning business, right? So today I had a massive issue with the Optus outage. That just killed my life today. So the gate system works on Optus SIM card, right? So I put your number into the gate. I put your number into the gate system, right? And then when you call it, it opens. Well, if Optus is down, the gate doesn't open. That's a big problem when you have 130 tenants.
Manually override?
Sorry?
Can you manually override that?
You can manually override it when you're on site, but the property's in Wollongong and I'm in Sydney, so it's an hour and 45 away. And I had a full.
I'll be there in 5 minutes.
I had a full stack of calls. Like I had 6, 7, 8 calls today. Talking to investors about buying, properties for them. Right. So I didn't have time to run down for an hour and 45 to fix it. But yes, there is a manual override. So I would have, because I can enter the facility through a remote control anywhere in Australia. Not the remote control, but I can call the actual gate and it opens. So a guy called me, a tenant, and he's been in there for ages. I know that he knows how to open the gate. He's like, I'm having problems opening the gate. And I saw there was an Optus outage. I was like, I didn't even like twig in my mind that I was going to have an issue, right? So I'm like, that's weird. He emailed me. He didn't actually call me on the landline, the business landline. I was like, okay, well, I can see him in the cameras. So I've got 24-hour surveillance on it, so I can see everything that goes on in the facility from my mobile phone or my laptop. And I'm like, all right, I can see he's at the front. I'll just open it for him manually, like remotely from here. And I call the number to try and get it to open the gate open, and it was dead. And I was like, oh, it's an Optus SIM card in there. Of course, it's not going to work. So, it was just like, what do I do? I can't do anything. I can't get there in time to open it. But if I was on site, I can manually open it for people
because he can't pick up his phone. I mean, I suppose.
Yeah, and the business landline also was run through Optus. So they couldn't call me, like the business, they couldn't get in, and all they could do was email me. So that was a massive drama today that I was sorting out between calls, which was annoying. But finally it came back online around 4 o'clock or something, and then we were good to go. But if that didn't go back online, I was going to go tomorrow morning, manually override the gate, as in like you put a key into the motor, it takes it offline, and then you can slide it open manually. And I was just going to leave it open and be on site because I can work on site. I've got an office there. I've got a 2-bedroom apartment that's really nice and like furnished now. I could live there if I wanted to. Part of my value add strategy is to put someone into that that unit and get about $20,000 extra per year from it.
Love it. Some questions that have come through. Anyone that has got questions, throw them in, and we will try and get to as many as we can. Do you vet tenants too? Like you want business owners instead of mum and dad storage? But that's actually a question I have as well. Is like how much of the mix is mum and dad, normal people every day, and businesses?
Yeah, so it's probably about like 70% like just everyday storers of storing like stuff, and then about 30% or so businesses. So you want the businesses are better because they actually need to utilize it for their business, but sometimes they'll have less stuff in the unit. So they might just have their gear in the unit that they take in and out every single day. So it's easy for them to move, right? But if someone's actually put like their junk in it and you like literally open the roller door and the junk is up to here in your face, it's very, very hard for that person to move out. So they're a stickier tenant. So as long as they meet the requirements, if they can actually afford to pay it. And there's also a system called Store Check. So if you've ever like been delinquent on your payment and you've signed a self-storage agreement to the SSAA, then we have the right to actually put you onto the list of Store Check. So when someone comes in, I can check the system to see if they're a bad storer or a good storer. If they're not on that list, then they've obviously haven't like done anything bad. But if they've done a runner from 5 other facilities, I'll say to them, no, you can't come in. Like I can't store with you.
Okay, so there's a whole TV show, bloody, when they crack
Storage
open
Wars.
a storage wars.
Yeah.
Is that the real world? Is that what actually happens? There's a lock on there. They don't know what's in it, and then you get all these weirdos around, and you start bidding up for what they think inside the unit, or like how does that stuff?
So
work?
it doesn't. That Storage Wars doesn't really happen in Australia. You're not allowed to like just sell someone's stuff without like the fair market value. There is a site called I Bid on Storage. So the process goes that after they've been delinquent for over 42 days, and I actually stretch it out to give it to 52 days just to make sure that they don't want to pay and they want to relinquish their things. Then you have to go into the unit and you have to itemize their stuff, take photos of it, and then you put it onto this like online website called I Bid on Storage. It's like eBay, and it's an online auction for it. But like it's a lot of time. Basically, if you have to take someone's stuff back, you have to take the unit back, you actually lose money. Like it's not very profitable. You don't get to keep all the funds. So if you're doing it by a letter of the self-storage agreement, you actually are supposed to take the money back that you owe them, that they owe you,
Jeez.
and then you give them the profit. So if they owe you like $1,000 and then the unit sells for $1,500, you have to give them $500 back. That's what you're supposed to do.
So there's another question that's coming here. So now you have a blueprint per se to replicate that deal. So
yeah, 100%. That's right. That's what I'm going to do.
How often these kind of deals would you say roughly come up? And what's your kind of threshold for how much profit you look at? A percentage you want to uplift, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I want at least a 20% cash on cash return after all said and done, right? So if I can push that, that's great, fantastic. But usually I'm underwriting it for a 20% cash on cash. And the way that this self-storage facility works is that increasing the rates doesn't cost anything. Like, so a lot of this actual facility, this project doesn't actually cost a lot of money to increase the value. So one of the other things that I'm doing is I've got an attic area that was full of junk for the owner's junk. And it's a very, very large open space on the first floor. And I've got some pictures I can show you guys as well of the facility. But this particular space, it's been cleared out now, and I can fit about 8 more units in there. So I'm just going to section it up, put roller doors up there, and get about 8 more units. I've also got other spaces in the actual property. Like he had like a chicken coop and like a garden that he was working on in parts of the facility, like near a shed. So I'm going to rip all that out and put some portable storage in there. So there's a really good company that does all these different styles of portable storage. So it's not just a container like with the end, like on the short side. You can do containers on the longer side with like doors on the long side. So you can fit it into like really tight squeezes that you wouldn't think you would be able to fit more storage in. So I've got a couple of different ways that I can add extra net lettable area. And then the last thing is that the residential 2-bedroom apartment, I can actually rent that out for about $400 a week now. And so that's the extra $20,000 that I can basically increase the income, which increases the value.
Love it. Well, if anyone has any rollers, let's go.
B&D roller doors.
Yeah, B&D is a common brand.
Roller doors. Well,
Yeah, I learn new things each and every week on this podcast. It's like Miele appliances. I didn't even know what the heck. I know it seems like it's crazy.
Love it.
I want to ask this because this is we did kind of cover this. If you want to make $300K per year in cash flow, do you need to spend millions on the commercial property though? If you watch, we kind of did cover this, but what are your thoughts on this kind of question, Andrew? How would you address this question?
Typically, you would need to spend millions of dollars if you wanted to increase, like to make that kind of money. Like, how else are you gonna make that, turn the asset into like, how else are you gonna get that cash flow? Like, typically you would. So, depending on your starting
money to make money kind of mindset or mentality, isn't it?
Well, it's like any other asset, right? So you're going to need around a $5 million asset to make 300,000. So I just did a calculation. I did 300,000 divided by 0.06. That makes a $5 million asset that you would need at a 6% return, which is a common return right now. That's a good yield, right? So that's how much real estate you would need, or portfolio value that has 6% return to make $300,000 net. That's net income. You still have to pay the mortgage.
Yeah, but over time, I guess it's more about trying to pay down the debt with that net income. So by the time you hit 50, 70, or you're fully paid down the debt, like you're the person that you bought this off, did they have a mortgage on the loan, like on the property?
Yeah, so they had a $1.5 million mortgage on the property that I still pay for them. So the mortgage is still there, right? So I have to pay $8,444 every single month of expenses to that mortgage, right? So I've eliminated all of the old owner's expenses. So all he really is worried about is his living expenses now. And I pay him $6,667 every single month. So he can more than like live off that with he has no expenses, other expenses. So like this is the way, like I spend I worked it out that max I would need to spend $22,000 every single month on expenses to put this deal together to make it all work. Now, in theory, that was very like high. I was overestimating, and it's actually more like $19,000 or $18,000 per month. But the self-storage facility actually returns over $30,000 per month every single year. That's the revenue that it generates. So I'm actually netting the difference, right? And I'm not using the money. I'm just using it on business expenses. So I'm putting signs out. I'm going to be sectioning up a part of the property. I'm, doing Facebook advertising, and the money just sits there waiting for something to be done with it. I don't need it for my lifestyle. I don't need it to live. I never accounted to use it for anything else but the self-storage facility. So I had that as a bargaining chip because I didn't need the money to use it. I could use all of it to make the deal work.
Yeah,
there you go. That makes perfect sense. On that note, I think we've exhausted the questions, and I think this has been a fantastic. There you go, Joe.
No, you're saying it all, mate. I think this has been one of the better. This has been my favorite, one of my favorite sessions. I said that last time.
Says that every week. It's like, but best Olympics ever. Yeah. This is the best Sydney. You are the winner. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
But it is. I mean, it's so interesting how you've been able to do this. It's definitely not for everyone. You have put so much blood, sweat, and tears. There's so many failed deals that we haven't talked about that go through this. but the returns, it just shows me like what happens when someone just focuses in on one thing and goes like what Jeff said at the beginning. He went, an inch wide
A
and
mile deep.
mile deep
Yep.
on this thing, and this has allowed you to create $3 million worth of value because you spent 5 years of education, I don't know, 7 years, however long you've been doing.
And I do have pictures and guys that I can go through, and I do have an actual like proper spreadsheet that I worked on, like that I worked off. If you guys have more time to work,
people wanted access to the spreadsheet, Andrew. So is there?
Yeah,
is that on
let's
your
share
website?
it.
Is that on the AP?
I was more thinking about sharing it now, while I can actually go through it, because it will make more sense if I share it now. If you guys have time, I know we are getting up there.
If Joe does,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably.
Let's see.
So do you want to see?
Do
you want to see pictures of the facility so we can all know what we're talking about for the last hour and 50 minutes, or do you want to see spreadsheet? I can run through the pictures
Don't
very
care about
quickly.
pictures. I imagine it's just ugly,
Okay.
ugly storerooms and roller doors. I don't care.
Spreadsheet. I could drive by it and visit it if I wanted to.
All right.
But while you're bringing that up, I found some amazing opportunities. I bid on storage.
Really disappointed. No one would suggest putting a granny flat. Jesus, granny flat.
Super interesting stuff that people have here.
Oh, what is that?
Anyway, let's see the spreadsheet. Okay, can you zoom in?
I am zoomed. I don't think it's on the screen though.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's on. I can see option self-storage.
You got I bid on storage on the screen, I think.
No.
This is still. It's
I
just
can
a bit
see
of a delay.
option self-storage spreadsheet.
Okay, so this is on face value what the option deal looked like. So I put down 5.7, or I basically like got it under contract for 5.7. I put down $150,000 deposit. The bank vow for the actual property was actually $10,500. So I didn't have to pay that because it's an option deal. So that's what it would be when I purchase it. The legals on this property to put together the whole option agreement, to put together all of the business contracts that I had to do with it, it ended up being about $24,000. So it's a lot on legal fees, right? So at starting like value, the gross revenue was 362. The net income was 122, right? So the cash flow after this is all of my option expenses. So the cash flow on face value would have been only $7,000 to me, right? So it's a cap of 2.15, which is not very good, right? Because this is all of my extra expenses, right? So for the extra outgoings, I had to pay $52,000 for rent for Foster. I had to pay Ferry Meadow owner $80,000 a year. I had to pay $20,000 extra for the Ferry Meadow agent and also the Foster agent. So I have $170,000 of extra expenses on this particular deal.
But it's going to come due in 12 months, right?
Well, this is right now. So what I actually did was I figured out exactly where I could add value to this property. So once you have a look at like this picture that I'm scrolling down to, you can see that I've identified all of the spaces on the property where I can add value with the references that are going to be below. So this long building, they're two long buildings. This is the shape of the property. It's a very skinny property, but it's extremely long. It's 3,000 square meters, right? So down here on reference 1, this is where the chicken coop was. This is where I'm going to rip out and put on more portable storage. Reference 2, this is another vacant area that I can put more portable storage. This reference 6 is the 2-bedroom apartment that I can rent out. This reference 5 up here is the attic area that was full of just the owner's junk. Like I've never seen anything so full. I had to like climb over things to get into it. And then this building here has got a first floor, right? So the whole property is built like a bomb shelter. It's got cinder blocks and like steel beams all over it. It's built very, very well. It's built to have a second floor and like a first floor on the ground level. So this building here that I've identified in red, it's all single level. So further on to my plan down the line, after I actually purchase this property in like 1 or 3 years, I could actually do a development in 1 or 3 years to put another first floor in this property, which would significantly increase the income again. This is 840 square meters of net lettable area that's not being used right now. And I've estimated that it's going to actually increase the value of around $2 million extra on top of the 9, right? So in this spreadsheet, there's a lot of information. So I put down all of my like to-do list of what I need to do to increase like refurbishments. I've done all my market comparisons. I've listed out every single storage facility in the area that I secret shopped. And then now I go into the phases, right? So phase 1 on acquisition, this is what it's returning at on face value. So it's $30,000 per month, right? Now his collection rate was a lot lower than that, I found out. But since I put in my property management system and I've automated it a lot, and I actually send notifications to people, people do pay. So I'm on face value, I was getting around $30,000 when I first started working it, right?
Wait,
so that left
you
me.
thought you were going to get more, and he said you're going to get 30, and like, well, we haven't got 30.
Well, they said it was 30, but when push came to shove, when I was actually looking at his books, he should have been getting 30, but because he never ever sent notifications to people to pay, they're like 4 days late, 7 days late, 14 days late, getting late fees. Yeah, like that kind of like constant reminder, then people actually wouldn't pay for a month, 2 months, and it just had a really bad collection. So because of the way he managed it, that's just what he received. He received about $20,000-ish, $24,000 per month of real revenue. But the actual facility, if you actually made full collection on it, should have been 30. So through my property management system, now I have notifications people of when they're late and when the storage invoice is coming due. I bumped that up pretty much straight away.
Yeah, but doesn't that change the value that you would get? Like, is that not a negotiation point?
Because once you see, you buy the property on what you've been told that you've actually like returning, right? And with an option deal, there's no due diligence in the option. The option is basically the due diligence, right? So because I didn't have a due diligence period for me to actually check like the actual revenue that's going into his account, that I because I knew that the self-storage facility was full and they should be returning this, but realistically in his bank account every single month he was actually only getting about 24,000 because of his bad collection. That's not a negotiation point because I knew that I could increase it straight away, and because I'm under option, not a due diligence in a standard contract of sale, it made no difference, and it would have been counterintuitive to me to go back and change the deal at that point. Does that make sense? Yeah. So on face value on acquisition, I'm only looking at like $17,000 cash flow to 2.15% yield. Not very good, right? But when I increase the rates, I'm actually increasing it, and I'm working towards this like every single month, $15,000 per month extra. So now it starts to be getting really, really nice right now. So right now I'm basically about halfway there. So I've increased the revenue about $7,000 extra already per month. So now I'm getting a lot more cash coming through. And once I get that to like fully done, it'll be about $186,000 of cash flow just by increasing the rates. This is with all of my option outgoings in it right now. So just keep that in mind. I've got a lot of extra expenses in this particular spreadsheet only to get the deal over the line. Once I'm actually taking it to the bank to get valued, these expenses won't be there. So the whole value will change. Okay. Yep. So these are my value add strategies, right? So phase 3 goes on further with the value add. So in the first year, I'm going to be increasing the rates, which is I'm already doing. And these are the references that I was talking about before, where I'm going to be putting portable units in the eastern corner. That's one of the corners in the reference. I'm going to be putting portable units in the tree side corner, putting units in where the parking spaces are. I'm going to be renting out the owner's garage. I'm going to be converting the first floor attic into self-storage, which is going to be...
We're going deep. I think we're going too far into the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I do love it, but
I think let's reel this.
Okay.
You've lost it.
The audience is
last
still
part.
here, though. Like, they're still like over.
Last part.
A lot of people
So
watching.
this is the spreadsheet that on execution of the option. This is like what is actually the value. So on execution, it's going to be 5.7. The stamp duty is going to be 360. Building and pest that I'm going to do is going to be 768. The bank valuation will be 10.5. The legal fees I've estimated about $6,000. Now the property will be grossing around $622,000. That's gross. Okay. It'll be netting $529,000, right? So I'm basically at 100% finance because the property purchase price is 5.7 and I'm getting 100% of that from the bank, right? So I've got
And
a
then
big
where does that
mortgage.
leave you as a net cash flow after the 5.7 mil?
So
debt?
net cash flow would be 160. So after
130.
all expenses are paid, all the income is paid, the mortgage,
Including the debt.
So it goes gross, then the outgoings, then net, then the mortgage, and then cash flow. So after everything, I'll be doing 130 from this cash flow every single year, and that would
basically 400K of interest. Are you doing IO or principal and interest? Or?
IO. So look, you can see here payments. It's $399,000 at a 7% interest. So it's a big mortgage.
That's massive because not to rain on a parade here of making a lot of money here, but $130,000 of cash flow is like someone's salary.
So I've replaced someone's salary. That's significant, I would say. So the cap rate on that now, I've increased it to 9.29. The cash on cash return is 33%. That's ridiculous. The pure cash flow is 20%. So pure means that all the expenses that I would have put into like increase the value, as in like sectioning up an area in the attic and things like that. So the pure cash flow, if everything included, is 20% cash on cash. And down here, this actually shows you the value. So over this way. So this is on execution, right? So on execution of the property, so you're only thinking about the cash flow, Joe.
Yeah.
Right? But on execution, so I execute the option with $3.3 million of forced equity on the property. That's the difference, right? So I've got $3.3 million of forced equity. The property may only cash flow $130, and you say may, and like $130 of free cash is pretty sick. You know what I mean? But I have $3.3 million of equity in the asset as well, right? So that's where the money is made.
You have that $130,000 that can just keep paying itself off and compounding. And then next year it won't be 130 because there's negative $130,000 worth of debt. And then it's 260 and it compounds and compounds, and then it will just pay for itself.
Yeah. And so the big like word here that you need to understand and make sure you focus on is forced equity. I didn't wait for the market to make me. In residential property, you wait for the market to make you. You are speculating that I'm going to buy this and in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be worth more. In commercial property, we force equity. We go in with a plan, knowing that the numbers stack up to result in added value, right? That's the difference between commercial property and residential property.
Mic drop. Go. I think that's I think Joe's about to drop his mic in a minute too. He's done.
And then after, as I was saying, the first floor development in 1 or 3 years, then I could put in a first floor, and that'll actually equate to $211,000 of extra income. And then the property would be more likely valued at about $13 million.
Yeah, nice. Mate, that's unreal. You have blown my mind. And first thing I'm going to be doing is talking to you about what's this, self-storage facilities. I don't know, Steve so how do people learn more? How do we get more Andrew Bean in our life? How do we learn more about this stuff and the amazing, what this is? Really cool.
So I'm going to be doing a lot more content about this on the Commercial Property Show. If you want to email me, you can email me at ab@andrewbean.com.au. I can also help you to buy some real estate through Policy Property with a buyer's agency. And I'm also going to be putting together some more group deals as well after we get this project over the line. That's what we'll be doing as well. So lots of different avenues. Well, a group, like a small group syndication. So this would be classed as like a small JV group deal, right? So because I've got me and a couple of other investors involved, and they're cash investors, so they get a return on their cash. They're not equity partners. That's what I'll be doing. So, you know, you get like 15. I offered like 15 to 22.5%, which is a really significant return.
Solid negotiator. Who negotiated 22.5% from you?
Well, I offered it to them. You know what I mean?
Love
so
it.
it's about
Everyone
helping
wants that.
people to get ahead and making more money as well. Because if I'm making some
Everyone's-
good money, then it's nice that other people can make money too.
100%. Been unreal. Andrew will be checking out the show. You and Steve actually did a great beginner course on commercial property. So if you don't understand, the commercial property show, that is foundational. But thank you very much for sharing that, mate. We'll let's go buy up all of the commercial property that there is for self-storage.
But and you know the crazy thing, I looked at where that is. I go to a fruit market just around the corner from there, and the doctor I go to is like literally 2 streets from there. So
yeah,
I don't live in Fremantle, but
yeah. Where do you live? Well, maybe you shouldn't tell me.
I live in the south side, mate. No, I don't live up near those the affluent folks where all of they're rolling in.
Okay, well, no one else needs to hear this. Let's wrap this up. Okay, let's go buy a property, guys. Go get some storage in your life. Have a good one. See you
Thanks,
later.
guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
See ya.
Have a good night.